Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Gary Ridgway is believed to have murdered at least 71 teenage girls and women near Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. The victims were thought to be sex workers or runaways picked up along Pacific Highway South. Ridgway would show the women pictures of his son to trick them into believing him. This is the story of the Green River Killer.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see. Whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer.
Gary Leon Ridgway, born February 18, 1949, was convicted of 48 separate murders at first. Another conviction was added as part of his plea bargain, bringing his total number of convictions to 49, making him the second most prolific serial killer in U.S. history based on confirmed murders. Gary Ridgway, the second of Mary and Thomas Ridgway's 3 sons, was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. His family life was troubled. Relatives described his mother as domineering, and he witnessed more than one violent argument between his parents when he was young. His father worked as a bus driver and frequently complained about the presence of sex workers. Ridgway struggled with bedwetting until he was 13, and his mother would wash his genitals after each episode. Later, he told defense psychologists that as a child, he had conflicting feelings of rage and sexual attraction toward his mother, and fantasized about killing her. He stabbed a 6-year-old boy who survived the attack when he was 16 years old. Ridgway had led the boy into the woods before stabbing him through the ribs into the boy's liver. Ridgway graduated from Tye High School in 1969 and married Claudia Craig, his 19-year-old high school girlfriend. He joined the U.S. Navy and was stationed in Vietnam, where he served on a supply ship and saw combat. Ridgway had frequent sexual encounters with sex workers while in the military and contracted gonorrhea. Despite being outraged, he continued this activity without protection. The marriage lasted only a year. Marcia Winslow, his second wife, claimed he put her in a chokehold. He became religious, going door to door, reading the Bible aloud at work and at home, and insisting that Marcia follow the strict teachings of their pastor. Ridgway would also frequently cry after sermons or Bible readings. Despite his beliefs, Ridgway continued to hire sex workers and wanted his wife to have sex in public and inappropriate places, including areas where his victims' bodies were later discovered. His 3 ex-wives and several ex-girlfriends claimed he demanded sex from them multiple times a day. He frequently desired to have sex in a public place or in the woods. Ridgway admitted to having a fixation on sex workers, with whom he had a love-hate relationship. Although he frequently complained about their presence in his neighborhood, he also used their services on a regular basis. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Ridgway is believed to have murdered at least 71 teenage girls and women near Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. In court statements, Ridgway later reported that he had killed so many that he lost count. A majority of the murders occurred between 1982 and 1984. The victims were thought to be sex workers or runaways picked up along Pacific Highway South. After minutes of sexual activity, from behind, Ridgway would wrap his forearm around the front of their necks and use the other arm to pull back as tightly as he could, strangling them. He murdered the majority of his victims in his home, truck, or in a remote location. The majority of their bodies were discovered in wooded areas near the Green River, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and other dumping grounds in South King County. In addition, 2 confirmed and 2 suspected victims were discovered in the Portland, Oregon area. The bodies were frequently left in groups, sometimes posed, usually naked. He would occasionally return to the victims' bodies and have sexual encounters with them. Ridgway later explained that while necrophilia was not more sexually satisfying, having sex with the deceased reduced his need to obtain a living victim and thus reduced his risk of being caught. 2 victims remain unidentified because most of the bodies were not discovered until only the skeletons remained. Ridgway occasionally contaminated dump sites with other people's gum, cigarettes, and written materials, and he even transported a few victims' remains across state lines into Oregon to confuse the cops. To investigate the murders, the King County Sheriff's Office formed the Green River Task Force in the early 1980s. Robert Keppel and Dave Reichert were task force members who interviewed incarcerated serial killer Ted Bundy on a regular basis in 1984. Bundy expressed his thoughts on the killer's psychology, motivations, and behavior. Bundy speculated that the killer was returning to the dump sites to have sex with his victims, which proved to be true, and that if police discovered a new grave, they should stake it out and wait for him to return. Ridgway was arrested in 1982 on prostitution charges, but only became a suspect in the Green River killings in 1983. Ultimately, he managed to pass a polygraph test in 1984. His hair and saliva were collected by police on April 7, 1987. With everything going on and Ridgway being a suspect in the murders, he began dating Judith Mawson around 1985, who became his third wife in 1988. Judith claimed that she had no suspicions about Ridgway's crimes prior to being contacted by authorities in 1987, and that she had never heard of the Green River Killer before that time because she did not watch the news. The 1987 samples were later subjected to DNA profiling, which provided evidence for his arrest warrant. Ridgway was working as a spray painter at the Kenworth Truck Factory on November 30, 2001, when police arrived to arrest him. Ridgway was arrested nearly 2 decades later, after first being identified as a potential suspect, when DNA evidence conclusively linked semen left in the victims to the saliva swab taken by police. Marcia Chapman, Opal Mills, Cynthia Hines, and Carol Ann Christensen were the 4 victims named in the original indictment. After a forensic scientist identified microscopic spray paint spheres as a specific brand and composition of paint used at the Kenworth factory during the time frame when these victims were killed, 3 more victims, Wendy Caulfield, Deborah Bonner, and Deborah Estes, were added to the indictment. On November 5, 2003, Ridgway entered a guilty plea to 48 charges of aggravated first-degree murder as part of a plea bargain, agreed to in June, that would spare him execution in exchange for his cooperation in locating the remains of his victims and providing other details.
Ridgway killed so many women it took nearly an hour to read all the charges.
I strangled Cynthia Hines to death. Is that your statement, Mr. Ridgway?
Yes, it is.
Is it true?
Yes.
One at a time, Ridgway admitted killing 48 women, usually dumping their bodies in the Green River near Seattle.
On December 18, 2003, King County Superior Court Judge Richard Jones sentenced Ridgway to 48 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He was also sentenced to an additional 10 years in prison for tampering with evidence for each of the 48 victims, bringing his total sentence to 480 years. After the remains of his 49th victim were discovered, he was handed down another life sentence. In 2003, Ridgway led prosecutors to 3 bodies. On August 16 that year, the remains of a 16-year-old girl discovered near Enumclaw, Washington, 40 feet from State Route 410, were identified as Pammy Annette Avent, a victim of the Green River Killer. In September 2003, the remains of Marie Malvar and April Buttram were discovered. The Associated Press reported on November 23, 2005, that a weekend hiker discovered the skull of one of the 48 women Ridgway admitted murdering in his 2003 plea bargain with King County prosecutors. Tracy Winston's skull was discovered on November 20, 2005, by a man hiking in a wooded area near Highway 18 near Issaquah, southeast of Seattle. Ridgway confessed to more confirmed murders than any other serial killer in the United States. He confessed to 48 murders over the course of 5 months of police and prosecutor interviews, 42 of which were on the police's list of possible Green River Killer victims. County prosecutors began releasing videotaped recordings of Ridgway's confessions on February 9, 2004. He initially told investigators in one taped interview that he was responsible for the deaths of 65 women. Ridgway claimed to have murdered 71 victims and confessed to having sex with them before killing them in another taped interview with Reichert on December 31, 2003, a detail he did not reveal until after his sentencing.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.